welcome to Women Who Lead in Education. My name is Shelley Anderson, and I would like to introduce you to my co-host this evening, Dr. Kimbria Jackson, Dr. Anthony,
Hi.
and Dr. Roz Gaskins.
Hello, everyone.
The purpose of this show is to gather some smart, opinionated women who currently are leaders in education and spend an hour just talking about some of the issues that we face. Before we get started, I'm going to let each one of the ladies tell you about their current role, a little bit about their background, and that will give you some insight. We worked really hard to make sure that we were finding people who were knowledgeable, who were experts in their field. And so I want to make sure that you know what these young ladies do. So let's start with Dr. Kimbria Jackson, if you can tell the audience your current role and something about you.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I am so honored to be serving with you all in leadership and just having the opportunity to be a part of such a wonderful panel this evening. A little bit about myself. I am an assistant principal at McKinley Technology High School in Washington, D.C. I've been there for 4 years now, and I've been in the school district now for a little over 10 years. And I come from I've had several opportunities to engage in this work on a leadership level, from having the right on the job training, from that, as well as pursuing outside endeavors to further my leadership and deepen my level of understanding when it comes to education. So I'm excited to be with you all this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson. Dr. Anthony?
Hi, good evening. And I want to say thank you for having me. It's such an honor and a pleasure to be invited to be a co-host. As far as my educational career is concerned, I've served in many different capacities, from dean of students to department chairs to instructional coaches. And right now I currently serve as a Foundations of Technology educator, with the possibility of moving over to the academic coordinator position in less than a month. So my education is kind of well-rounded. I started college at 16 at Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I continued the course at Northwestern. I didn't stay at Southern. It was a family thing. I didn't want to be too far away from my mom. And so as the previous person was saying, we have a lot of outside experiences. I also write RFPs and grants, and I also counsel and mentor up-and-coming educators and PhD students that are interested in, getting their PhDs. So I've also authored articles, and I'm also author of children's books. And I've blind reviewed for a technology journal before, and another journal that I can't recall the name of, and I apologize. But like I said, again, thank you for having me, and it's such an honor and a pleasure.
Thank you, Dr. Anthony. Dr. Gaskins?
Hello, everyone. Again, I normally go by Dr. Roz, it's fine.
Sorry.
And I call myself a teacher leader. I've had roles from instructional coach, teacher department chair, acting administrator, testing coordinator, data coach, elementary school teacher, middle school teacher, math, science, art, you name it, I've done it. Right now, I'm currently the program coordinator for a charter school here in the DMV area. This is my first year in that role, and I am in charge of discipline and the school culture. So it's very exciting. I love my position. I get to build relationships with students and families. I love it. I love it. I love it. And my passion is really teacher leadership and working with teachers and teaching them to really improve and brush up on their leadership skills as well. So that's my passion. I love coaching and helping teachers reach their full potential. And I love engaging in conversations like this. So I am super excited to join these wonderful educators on this panel. So thank you so much for having me. And again, I love teacher leadership. That's the thing I love. And so I also am an educational consultant. I am the CEO and founder of the Village Leadership Group, LLC, and we coach and train and support teacher leaders. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you, Dr. Roz. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Shelley Anderson. I am currently a principal in Washington, D.C. at Meridian Public Charter School. It is a middle school. I am also a mother. I have a 7-year-old son. I am very, very passionate about education, education of all kids, but I'm unapologetically focused on the education of Black and Brown children and making sure that they have access to the most rigorous curriculums and making sure they have access to the best opportunities, because as you know, that is not always the case. So I want to get started with an issue that is kind of inspired by my roots. I am in Washington, D.C. right now, but I'm actually a Texas girl. I was in Dallas, Texas before I came here. I was teacher, assistant principal, instructional coach in Dallas. And the reason why I bring this up is because my state of Texas has been doing the fool whenever it comes to education. And so I thought that we would start here because this is something that's very close to my heart. I still have many close friends who are educators in Texas. And I want to talk about this issue of critical race theory. Now, just to kind of give our audience some background, critical race theory is a framework that has been taught in universities for years. Recently, the far right has framed this false narrative around critical race theory and made it sound as if there are people in K-12 education who are just dying to teach critical race theory. That is not true. I am not aware, I don't think any of you are aware of anyone in K-12 education who has ever resoundingly been about teaching critical race theory. It has always been a college concept and framework. So regardless of what you think of this, I want to start by saying the far right has taken a non-issue and really controlled the narrative and made it into an issue. So now they've gotten people worked up and charged up about something that is a non-issue. Now, the reason why this is dangerous is because they have used this narrative to put in jeopardy the ability of Texas educators to teach facts. And I'm talking about facts like slavery. Slavery is a fact. Jim Crow, the Jim Crow South is a fact. Systemic racism is a fact. There are documents, there are all kinds of artifacts to prove this. This is not anything that should be disputed. However, they've entangled this idea of critical race theory in the minds of people who are not knowledgeable on the subject. And they have started to actually pass policies that have led educators to recently suggest, and I quote, even about the Holocaust, maybe we should present the other side of this, okay? So this is like going beyond even now slavery. Now some educators are feeling like there has to be another side presented about the Holocaust as if that is not simply a fact. As you can tell, I'm charged up about this because a lot of this nonsense started in my home state. I'm a proud Texan. I love Texas educators. I love Texas children. But the other reason I'm charged up about this is because it has implications for the entire nation. People are looking at what's going on in Texas and using their playbook to come up with a playbook for their own state. And that's a problem. That's an issue. So what I thought I would do this evening is start this off by talking about critical race theory, and I would love to hear your thoughts, your anything you have to add to the conversation, any responses you have, and ultimately, what I would like for us to talk about is, um, what do we do about this? I mean, it's up to us, to protect this rich legacy that we have. It's up to us as educators to ensure that not only our children but all children know the truth about American history, even the ugly parts. So let's talk about it. Who would like to get us started? Dr. Roz?
Yes, I was waiting for you to pass the mic. I won't be long because I really want to hear from the rest of the panel because as a teacher, as an educator in the K-12 world, when I first heard about critical race theory and all of the issues surrounding it, I'm like, that's not our fight. What are you talking about? That's not our lane. That's not our discussion. What is the big deal? That's a college thing. But then, like you said, Texas just took it to the next another level. And again, I think one of the things we have to do is educate people and letting them know what CRT is. Because again, there's a misconception, a misunderstanding. And like you said, there's implication to that. Ignorance is going to breed more ignorance. And we're going to go down this slippery slope where pretty soon our books, our literature, anything with a black or brown face on it is going to be canceled. And they're just going to put CRT label on it. And so that's the problem because again, in the K-12 world, it's all about diversity and inclusion. We want to make sure that when children are in our classrooms, that they see themselves and that they're learning the truth about their heritage, about their community, about their world. So we're never trying to slant the story or make people look bad. Like you said, we're telling the facts. And we want to answer their questions truthfully. When they, have questions, well, why did they do this? Well, why did Martin Luther King do this? Well, why did they have to have civil rights? When, I used to teach elementary and the children had questions. I never made it seem like white people are devils or white people are bad. I tried to give different sides and share with them the good and the bad. Like you said, facts. So I'm gonna stop right there because I can keep going on and on.
Thank you, Dr. Roz. Thank you, Dr. Jackson.
Thank you. And Dr. Roz, I couldn't agree more. First of all, the way I see it is it's time to tell the truth. I think for so long, we have been sugarcoating the reality and the facts. And I think I write for one of my, a newspaper, the Tri-City African American Tri-City newspaper back home in Warner Robins, Georgia, where I'm from. And we started the newspaper this year. And we're now in our November edition, and we've been doing really well. And one of the things that we've been talking about, that's been our driving force for the paper, is keeping it unapologetically African American Black. And we're speaking the truth. We're not swaying it. We're not trying to persuade people. We're speaking the facts of our history, the facts of our reality. And I think that we have to take that into our school. I actually wrote an article on critical race theory for the newspaper. And I found it to be so interesting how we are expected to hush and be quiet over the topics that had a major impact on our society, not just on African Americans, the entire society. And I think once we educate our students on what is the reality, because there are a lot of things that I learned later, but I was taught certain things differently when I was growing up. And I'm from the South. So in the South, things were just different. And how you learned it was different. And the things that you learned were different. And I think that we cannot we cannot shelter this truth anymore. It is time that we educate all. It's not just the African Americans. We also need to the other counterparts. Everybody must get educated on this critical race theory. And even if you're far right, in the middle, wherever you are, it doesn't even matter. I think a lot of people operate or speak things because they are not educated on what critical race theory is truly about and what the messages that come from using or teaching critical race theory.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson. Do you have anything you'd like to add, Dr. Anthony?
I mean, I'm in agreement with both of the previous panelists. You know, with anything new, there's always going to be pushback. And from the time that I can remember, and I'm from the dirty South. I'm from Louisiana. So from the time that I can remember, it's always been a pushback towards, you know, African Americans and African American history and the things that we learned in school. And so critical race theory is no different. People are afraid of what they don't know and what they think they know, but they really don't know. So, you know, like each panelist said, you know, we have to educate each and every person. So we have to educate them on what the critical race theory is, but it's just like with our black skin is being weaponized. And so is critical race theory is being weaponized in a way that, you know, they don't want to push it and have us engage the kids, because we've been teaching it all along. We just never called it critical race theory. Because if you had a black educator growing up, we got critical race theory in school, regardless if it was called that or not. That's how we were educated, and that's how we learned certain things. So, you know, with that being said, when it comes to dealing with, you know, our white counterparts, we have to do it in a way that is basically not so offensive. And I'm just saying it in a way that they get it, so that they won't think that we're charging at them, because anytime that we say and do anything, it's always, you know, for us as Black women, or we're angry Black women, we can't be passionate about something, we can't express our feelings, we can't, you know, do certain things, but it's not that way for them. So we have to push it in a way that is non-threatening and non-biased, so that they can understand it and they get it, because right now it's inflammatory and they're not understanding what they need to understand in order to, you know, push it in the schools. It's critical race theory. Oh my God, my child is going to be indoctrinated into something, and my child is going to be turned into something, because, you know, all these things are learned behaviors. Racism is a learned behavior. We're not born racist. We're taught to be racist. So even, you know, with that being said, we still have to, you know, like push the envelope, but we have to do it in a way that is, you know, kind of subtle, and they get it so that they can understand it, so that they can not give that pushback.
Thank you, Dr. Anthony. I'm glad that you brought that up about the pushback. The education of Black children has always been a political issue, and it continues to be political, especially the education of Black and Brown children whenever it comes to the truth about their heritage, their roots, their history. And now we have educators of all skin colors who have been engaged in the important work of telling the truth about American history. And so the politics of that has led to this huge pushback. But I think the point that I want to emphasize is that the far right has taken it to policy. If you read How to Be an Anti-Racist, one of the things he says about being an anti-racist is that the work is in policy. Who wants to continue that conversation? What work do we have to do as Black women leaders to ensure that we are fighting just as hard to make sure that there are policies in place that protect our history, our heritage, and continue to educate all children in the correct way about American history? Who wants to talk about that?
Well, I mean, you know, the fight has never ended. We're always fighting. We've never stopped. But the thing about the policy is we have to have the right players and the key people in at the right table that is making the policy. We never stop pushing for the policy. It's like, you know, at the local level, you know, you have certain things that you want to push, and then it doesn't go to where it needs to go because the right person didn't sign off on it. and the right person didn't, agree to push that policy. So we're here with that now. For example, when they were out, with the Asians and they had the attacks on Asian Americans, look how quickly that policy went through. You know what I'm saying? And we as African Americans, we've been fighting these battles years and years and years through the movement, and these people are piggybacking off of us on the civil rights movement and getting all their agendas and all their policy pushed through. But when it comes to us and our agendas, we're a little too forward, or, we got to step back. We have to, make sure that, we speak in a subtle tone. We have to make sure that we basically stay in our place in order to, even get a seat at the table. So it's not that we're not fighting for it, and it's not that we're not trying to get the seat at the table. It's just that we haven't made it to the right table to deal with the right people to get our agenda where it needs to go. And that's just my thoughts.
Okay, how do we get to the table? How do we get there?
So for one, we have to, grassroots with boots on the ground. We have to garner that support in the local community, and once we garner that support in the local community, we move to like the local policy with the school boards and things like that. And then once we get there, then we move to the national stage. But we have to have like solid people. And for what I have seen is we're house divided. You know what I'm saying? So with the Black community, one person can say something against what we're believing in, and you take half of the supporters over on that false narrative. So we have to get that house divided back into a whole, and we have to push from the ground up and go into like the national stage, because I think we're okay kind of sort of locally, but when it comes into moving into the national stage, I think that's where we falter some when it comes to pushing our agenda and pushing our policy, because they don't see no unity.
I think that the far right did something interesting in Texas, in that instead of jumping to the national stage, they really fought at the state level. And they were able to get this kind of pushed through actually pretty quickly. And because they got it pushed through, it garnered the attention of the national level. So I wonder if there's a lesson there for us, or if there's something else in it that we need to take from that. Dr. Roz, Dr. Jackson, what do you guys think?
Well, definitely a lesson that we can take. I know when you said, the book about how to be an anti-racist, when I read that book, it kind of woke up and stirred something in me that I could do more. Because I was like, wait a minute, I'm reading the book in the beginning thinking, oh, certainly I'm an anti-racist.
Yeah, of course I'm an anti-racist. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Then, midway through, you're like, wait a minute.
Wait, yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I think it speaks to that we need to be, actively monitoring what's happening, right? We can't turn a blind eye and just figure, like, oh, things are going to work out. So you have to advocate, you have to fight, you have to get involved. You have to learn what's going on in politics and what's going on at your local level, state level, national level, whatever that's impacting your school, your community. You need to know what's going on, who's the players, who's sitting in what seat, and what policies are getting passed through. We have to get more involved. And so I think that that's one of the things. And that's why when like I said, when you said how to be an anti-racist, I'm like, again, going back to my original statement, we have to educate, be educated and teach others. We got to grab our folks and say, listen, this is what's going on. I need your help to fight. So we have to form committees, form groups, and really put more, like she said, put more boots on the ground. And then one of the things too that I was thinking about, there are some Black and brown people in key places, and they need our support. And so also sometimes some policies have good intentions, and it looks like on the surface level that it's for us. And so we have to be careful with that as well, and really monitor the impact. And the book actually talked about that, how there are certain policies that we rally behind, but wait a minute,
right?
It's devastating to our community.
Devastating. Mm-hmm.
Right. So we have to be careful. And so we always have to not jump too quick, don't jump on the bandwagon too quick, and say, oh yeah, that's the policy I want to vote for, or I get behind. No, wait a minute. If we go for that policy, who does it impact?
Mhm.
You know, and once we approve it, let's monitor it, because it may need to be modified and it may need to be changed. So again, we have to be diligent. We have to be consistently paying attention to what's going on.
I agree with
I'm sorry,
every
Shelley.
word of that. Yes.
And one more thing, it's no surprise with the policy in Texas. I lived in Texas for like 8 years or whatever, and been going there all my life ever since I was a child. And it's no surprise. I mean, they had one of the worst, abortion laws that they passed or whatever. So it's no surprise that they were able to pass the critical race theory. I mean, one of the problems that I see is that we just don't vote. You know what I'm saying? So they vote. The Republicans, they vote, regardless of, their income, their status, the socioeconomic status or whatever, they go out and vote. And where we fall is we don't go out and vote, and we're reactive to, what has already been taking place and what has already been done. Because if you look at the data in the statistics just from the presidential race or whatever, you'll see that, most of the people who are registered Democrats didn't even bother to vote. So that's where we're losing when it comes to, like implementing policy and implementing change as well, because their supporters go out and vote. They know what to say to spark their base. They know what to say to get them amped up. They know what to say to, get them at the polls. So we need to have some, something like that as well to get our base and our people at the polls as well to support our agendas. And I don't think that we're gonna, spark change and spark policy until we get those boots on the ground and we start attacking, getting people to go out and vote and understand that their vote actually matters. Because in the previous election, when Trump was against Hillary Clinton, a lot of the social media was like, don't go vote. Your vote doesn't matter. And again, it goes back to, like mindset and education and understanding the voter process in order to make the change. And a lot of people who were saying that, their votes didn't matter, didn't even understand the voting process. So again, like she was saying, that we have to have those boots on the ground, we have to educate, and we have to, get the information out to the people.
Thank you. Dr. Jackson, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yep, actually, that I couldn't agree more with any of what was said. I think I just want to highlight like one or two sentences from How to Be an Anti-Racist that I actually highlighted in my article that I wrote for the paper. He states that they flatly deny that racial inequality is the signpost of racial policy. They flatly deny the racist policy as they use racist ideas to justify the racial inequities. And for me, that spoke volumes, because when we're talking about policies and law and things of that nature, I found that that is not an area that you see a lot of African-American people. I completed a certificate in education law at Indiana University last school year. I think there were only two of us that were African-Americans, two people, right? And one of the other guy, he was pursuing his doctorate, so he had to do it as a course requirement for him. For me, it was for me to educate myself, because I want to affect change in policy. Because I feel like our policies are discriminatory against people of color. And if we don't have people who are educated in place to communicate and get the boots on the ground, know what to form, how we go about forming it, how we go to be able to push our policies, agendas, whatever, to get that stuff signed off for them. You spoke about our other counterparts that just, when it was people were attacking them, so on and so forth, right? I also see that with our LGBTQ community. They themselves have found their way to advocate to get their policies and their rights and so on and so forth. Yet we as African Americans have not figured that out, especially when it comes to education. And that's something that we have to change. And that starts with leadership and us being, when we talk about what positions and how do we get to the table, well, we got to educate ourselves first, which is why I went back to get that education. I don't have to go back to school no more. If I don't want to go back, I don't have to, right? But I also understand that it's bigger than my doctoral degree. It's bigger than that. I have a charge as an educator to continue to do this fight, to do this work. And so I wanted to be educated so that I can affect change in policy. It's one thing when you know the law, is another thing when you know policy. It's great when you can deal with both. And we have to get people in the right positions to be able to do that. But that starts with educating ourselves first.
That is some of the best stuff I've heard in a very long time. I could not agree more. How to be an anti-racist. First of all, I'm glad that it seems to have struck such a chord with all of you, because it's obviously struck a chord with me. And I have things highlighted in it. I mean, I quote it to my staff during PD. I mean, like, it's, you know, it's my book. And I also really felt I guess the full weight of what he said whenever he said that to be an anti-racist, you have to be confronting, but he said through policy. And then all of a sudden I said, whoa, wait a second. Okay. I'm not doing that, you know? And I would have to learn how to do that. You're absolutely right, Dr. Jackson. I don't have the skill set at the moment to effectively do the work. But at some point, I've got to accept that challenge and figure out how to do it anyways. Because if not me, if not you guys, who? And so I really am personally excited that we've had this conversation, because it really reminds me of sort of like the feeling that I had whenever I first read the book. And I you know, like I was charged up. It was like doing COVID. I was ready to go out there, and, you know, I was kind of stuck in the house, but I was really charged up. And so, in fact, I was so charged up, I enrolled myself in a doctoral program, because I was like, okay, I gotta figure this out. I gotta get it together. You know what I mean? But I definitely, just due to where I am in the school year, have lost some of that charge. So I'm really happy that I had you ladies to speak to this evening. Is there anyone who would like to add anything else to our conversation, our discussion? And I would like to really take it to a personal level, a grassroots level. We know what the issue is. So I would like to hear more ideas. What is it that we do to make sure that we are having the correct impact that we need to have whenever it comes to this issue and similar issues? I think we definitely got a very solid step. We have to educate ourselves on policy, whether it's what the policy says by just reading it, whether it's by going back to school and learning more about how to write it ourselves, or how to, but we've got to, whether it be formally or informally, we've got to do the work and educate ourselves whenever it comes to local, state, and national policy. Is there anything else that you guys would like to add that we could do ourselves? I mean, all of us have an audience that we speak to on a daily basis. So what is it that we can be doing with the influence that we already hold, to make sure that we at least are making sure that, as far as our influence goes, we are protecting this legacy, this rich legacy of African Americans? Dr. Jackson?
Thank you. So it's so funny that this happened to be what we're discussing. As I'm going to do a PD with my staff next Friday on our policies and things that we put in place for our students that have become a bit challenging. As you educate yourself, when you know better, you should do better. And it's on student expression. And so it's a project that I had to do for my program as an assignment. That was our final project that we had to do. And I had to go and I had to study some of the law. I had to read several cases and gather all this content about students' right to express, or people's right to express. But since we're educated, we're talking about student expression. And when you are a leader, it takes for us to educate the staff. And so that's through PD. And I don't mean, oh, we're going to read this article and we're going to talk about it. That's not what I'm saying. I think we have set school policies on uniforms. We've set school policies on other things throughout our building without the knowledge, the true knowledge of our policy, like law and of the law. Let me start there, of the law. And so I want to, I charge all leaders to dive into that work. Even if it's critical race theory, we did the book study at my school last school year on how to be an anti-racist. And it was great. But it takes stuff like that to put people, to move us forward with our policies and to make sure our policies that, like, my school is probably 99% African-American. And when you're talking about 99% African-American students or students of color, you want to make sure that the policies and things that you put in place for those students, even as an African-American leader, are not discriminatory. So I say that as another means of, like, these are things that we have to start with the staff that we have in our building. That work starts there so that we can push out to form those groups and move our initiatives and agendas forward.
Absolutely. I always say, if you have a policy that disproportionately places children of color out of math class and in the principal's office, that is a racist policy and it needs to be changed. Thank you for sharing that. There are so many school policies that are in place because they've always been there. And no one has challenged it or questioned it. There's sort of like these old myths around, like, oh, well, if kids don't wear uniforms, they'll join a gang. There's no research for that. But it's just all these sort of like old adages that people have like sort of like repeated over and over. Oh, well, if the girl has on her headscarf, it's a distraction. To who? But you will find educators
or a hoodie.
Or a hoodie. Oh, yeah. A hoodie. I mean, people will lose their minds. Oh, well, that's a distraction. How could that child learn math? And these are educators of all races. But it is something that has been told to them. And so they have accepted that story as true, and they have failed to question it. And so I agree that part of the work of leadership is teaching our educators to question those policies and to really look at them and say, so what happens if we let kids wear hoodies? Like, what really is the damage here? What are we talking about? What happens if kids don't come in uniform? I mean, what really happens? And it's not always an easy conversation. People do not always react well to change, but it's a necessary conversation, especially if we are going to do the work of being an anti-racist educator and an anti-racist educational leader. So I am glad to hear that. I would love for you to share your PD. You can even come over and give it if you want to, because
you.
I am telling you, that is something that I would enjoy a lot, and it would be very beneficial to my staff and to our entire learning community.
Awesome.
Okay.
Will do.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Good stuff here tonight. Does anyone else have anything to add?
I want to jump in because Dr. Jackson took the words out of my mouth, so I'm not going to repeat everything you said. But thank you. Because I had a conversation with some of the leaders in my building about some of our policies and procedures. I mean, like who's the intended audience? When you say things like the earrings can't be larger than a quarter. Hello, this is what we wear. This is our culture. So what do you mean I can't wear my hoop earrings or my wooden earrings or whatever? And I'm at a high school. So our young ladies are wearing the earrings. And so they're going to end up in the principal's office. Or they can't wear, like you said, the hair scarves or head scarves or the whatever. Even if it's a fashionable wrap, they can't wear it. Why not? So we need to have those conversations. And, again, we need to question and know the power of our voice. And you find your power when you know more, when you're like you said, when you educate yourself, then you feel more confident to go and question the policies or question authority about what they're doing. So again, joining in on panel discussions like these and going to different conferences, reading books, that will give you the information and understanding and knowledge that you need to have that power and confidence to challenge the authority. So, and then once you start fighting and educating yourself, then educate others and get them involved in the fight as well. I love it. I love it.
Thank you, Dr. Roz. We're going to give you the last word here tonight. I think that is an appropriate place to end. Thank you to all of you ladies for lending your powerful voices to not only our discussion this evening, but also to the important work of education on a daily basis. We appreciate it. I want to remind everyone that we will be here every fourth Wednesday. So if you have a topic that you would like for us to discuss, please feel free to let us know. We are always looking for interesting topics. And as you can tell, we have a lot to say about a lot of things. So let us know. Next week, we are going to have our sisters, Women Who Lead in Finance. And so please join in for Women Who Lead in Finance, listen to their discussion, and also use it as a chance to empower and educate yourselves whenever it comes to finance. That is all. Thank you again. I'm going to be signing off for Dr. Jackson, Dr. Anthony, Dr. Roz, and for myself, Shelley Anderson. Thank you guys and good evening.